back. Just like that, we're back and we're moving now into our first segment for the morning. It is a fun Friday. We're about to have some fun with great conversation and good people. We actually have with us Her Excellency Marianne van Steen, European Union Ambassador to Belize, to Jamaica, Bahamas, Turks and Caicos, the Cayman Islands.
All the good ones.
Oh my goodness, I had to take a deep breath.
Ones.
I had to take a deep breath. Now, this is all about the European Union and the work that you guys do in this country. Once again, good morning and welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
You know, I just love your stance. You're just comfortable. I like it. I really like that. But let's talk about the work of the European Union. You know, for the most part, we'd hear the European Union, but a lot of people might not understand what's being done. And then the European Union being in the Caribbean, Central American country. How is that? And let's talk about the work of the EU.
And we have been here for more than 30 years. Isn't that sad? Sometimes I ask people, so do you know the European Union? And then they look at me and they're sort of like embarrassed because they don't really know. And I mean, how can you blame them? I think we have to work a little bit harder to explain what is the European Union. And it's very good that I'm here so I can explain a little bit. No, the European Union, I mean, we are 27 countries and we got together more than 70 years ago. And our main objective was actually to avoid that we're going to have another world war. We had 2 world wars which started on our continent. And so we said we got to do something about that. And little by little, we were 6, and then we were 8, and then we were 12, and then we were 15, and then we were 28, and now we're 27. But no, we are actually, in fact, we are a peace project that has evolved into a lot more than just, you know, trying to preserve peace. We have a very strong economic market. We're open traders. We have our values. We have our beliefs. I think we've done rather well on 70 years, and we hope we can continue to go in the same direction.
So what prompted the EU to begin to collaborate with other stakeholders within the Americas and in Africa and in Central Asia?
I mean, this has been growing, as I said, over the years. No, we've been present for a very long time in many, many, many countries. Mainly, to begin with, the countries with whom our European countries had links since the past, which I prefer not to repeat all the things what they did or they did not do well, but there were historical links. And actually, in the very beginning, let's say 70s, 80s, the main reason why we were out there was for, I mean, helping developing countries to develop themselves. So it was a lot about being a donor and those countries being recipients, and we trying to help with education, with health, with, you know, anything that that country would need. But I think we've evolved a lot. And I really don't think, and that is since the moment that I have been accredited here, I'm trying to pass the message that it's not just like the big donor and the small recipient and poor country gonna help you with ABC. No. Now it's really more about building a partnership, and I don't think I have to explain why. I mean, the world has changed as well.
It has.
I think we've all realized we need our friends and our allies in particular to defend the main values that we believe in and that we do know that we share with countries like Belize. So I think this is very important in this century, if I may say. I think the last 10, 15 years, we're really moving towards saying like, hey, we're partners. The global challenges, you have climate change, you have the war in Ukraine, you have really things that we need to work together because, you know, otherwise we may lose.
Because, and I like that you went there because, you know, the war in Ukraine and all these things that are happening in various countries. Is the work different or is it's the same mantra across the countries that you guys help?
No, every country is different, and I really think it's extremely important that we, you know, we do not go with one-fits-all approach. I mean, when I work with Belize, I will work in a different way than I will have been working in a country like Ecuador, where I was posted before. I think it's extremely important to listen and to get to know the country. It's very sad I'm not a resident here, but I do come as often as I can, and every time I learn a little bit more about the country. And it's only when you know the country better that you can, you know, strengthen the links, and that you can see where can we be an added value, where can we actually, you know, be of help to each other. I'm not saying just us to Belize, also Belize to the European Union. So no, it's not a one-fit-all approach.
And then when it comes to how you gauge or how success is gauged, and I'm saying this because I'm thinking here, you know, inflation across this world, especially from the COVID-19 pandemic, which still plagues us today. Yeah. There are different countries that would need much more help. We saw what happened during this pandemic. How do you gauge the success? And can you talk to us about that from the European Union standpoint, especially with respect to helping these countries?
Yeah, it's a difficult one. It's a difficult one because indeed we have now opened a new budget line to help countries that suffer more, and we look more at, you know, how can we make sure that the basic food basket of people remains affordable. But you know what, it's not really always about the money. I mean, very often people look at the European Union because we finance A, B, and C, and we do, but I really think it's about making sure that the money is well used.
Yes.
And what I notice in many countries is, you know, it's not a lack of money. It's a lack of people, administrative capacity to propose very good projects and then implement them well. So we're working a lot now in that field. We're trying to provide technical assistance. We try to help, you know, with capacity building, because we've come to a point that we think that many countries actually need that more than, you know, some food baskets. Yeah. You see what I mean? So that's a development as well in our, you know, the way that we try to, you know, help countries develop themselves.
Given the fact that you were in Ecuador prior to, and I know that you have a substantial amount of experience within the diplomacy and international relations field, but provided that you were in Ecuador before and now you are in the Caribbean sector, what are the differences in how you're approaching the way you collaborate with our stakeholders, with the policymakers, and so forth? What do you think that the Caribbean is lacking that we would need from the European Union, and how is it that we were different from Ecuador?
That's a very difficult question. Every country is different. Ecuador is a lot bigger. Even if it's a small country in Latin America, it's a big country. The countries in the Caribbean are very small. And I feel that many of the countries, they want to do it on their own. And I also feel more and more, because that's also it's something in Latin America, but they, you know, at least they try, or they... But here in the Caribbean, I find it sometimes difficult to continue, and I shouldn't actually be saying that on television, but I'm doing it anyhow. We push a lot for regional integration, like we want the countries to be together because they're too small to really make a difference at you know, the big geopolitical stage. But what I was gonna say, what I do realize, it is not really here. It is not really, the countries do not really, you know, look at how can I be best friend with my neighbor. They look at how can I be best friend with the big neighbor up there, or with, you know, Canada or the UK or the European Union. And I think we have to accept that, because even if we have been pushing very hard, I think at some point in time we have to accept that, you know, every country has a different kind of way of looking at, you know, with whom do you want to be best friends and what's your added value in doing trade with your neighboring country or doing trade, you know, with the other side. So that is one, I mean, a big difference. Even if I'm not going to say that in Latin America, its regional integration is so much stronger. I mean, it's just, you know, it's different. The problem in Latin America is more about the political stability, if I may. I think this region is politically so much more stable. So the potential to grow here is so much bigger. But then, you know, the problem is that, of course, you're small and you do not, you know, get together. It's just, you know, but political stability is a lot better here than in Latin America. But then trade, I mean, I've been working a lot on trade with Ecuador, and I mean, the small countries in the Caribbean, including Belize, even if you do have some exports, you know, it's just not very big. It's not, they're not big volumes. So why would you go all the way over to Europe? You look at the United States, or you look to Mexico, or to your neighbors, which makes a lot more sense. So there are a lot more differences in the way you work, what you think is important, but I think regional integration, trade, investments, the way, you know, the geopolitical situation of the country is very different from Latin America.
Belize sits in a unique position of being geographically located within Central America and having a very versatile cultural tie to both Latin America and the Caribbean.
Yes.
And it kind of puts us in certain difficult positions when it comes to international relations and diplomacy, because we want
but
to
it's an
be
advantage
friends with
as well.
everybody. Yes.
It's an advantage.
It's a big
Right.
advantage.
We look at Belize, but because for me, I mean, Belize is very unique from that point of view. I mean, you are part of CARICOM, you're part of SICA, which is a Central American political integration system, not the economic one. So for that's the thing about trade. You look at trade maybe with the Caribbean, but mainly towards the United States or to Mexico, but not with the Central American countries. But it is really not only an advantage, but it's something that we Europeans, of course, we like, because we think that these regional integrations, they have to be brought together. And we have really seen with this government all the efforts which have been made in order to bridge. Last year, Belize was the pro tempore, we call it, the presidency of CARICOM for the first 6 months. And now this year, for the first 6 months, Belize is the presidency of SICA. And you just feel the efforts to bring these two together, and it's not an easy task, but we very much appreciate that. We very much appreciate that. So yeah, and also the other advantage that Belize has is we have a bilateral envelope of funding for the country. But since Belize is in that very particular situation, Belize can also benefit from our funding from the region with the Caribbean and the funding with Central America. So yeah, a lot of possibilities, opportunities to grasp there.
Are there any other countries that the EU is actually looking at to say, you know what, we need to get you on board in terms of partnership? And what do they have to do to become a part of the EU? And I ask that because you like we mentioned, we hear about the EU, and we might not understand what the EU is and how they gain partnership, or how they actually positively affect other countries or help other countries. How do countries become a part of the EU?
I think, you know, what is very important is people-to-people contact. Because I mean, how can you know a country if, you know, you have never been able to, you know, to travel there, to know the country, to get the culture? And I wanted to draw the attention to something I discovered. We have a worldwide scholarship program, which is called Erasmus Mundus, and it is really a very good one. I can tell you, I've done it inside the European Union, but here Belizean students who would like to do a master's in Europe, they can apply, and if they're good enough, they can be selected to go to Europe, not just for 6 months or a year. It's a full master program, and you go for 2 years to 3 different countries. And I just met a Belizean student who did it last weekend, and honestly, when you talk with her, you really understand that she knows what Europe is about. And you know, that's the way that you can actually try to, you know, strengthen the bonds between, you know, another continent and here, because now it's all very like, Europe is nice, and maybe they have built this highway, or they've done this, but that is not what Europe is about, you know. So this Erasmus program, unfortunately, we have not seen so many candidates from Belize. So I use this opportunity to make a little bit of publicity. It's even open now for applications, so if there are any young Belizeans watching and they are interested, just go and check on our Facebook webpage, EU in Belize, and all the information is there. But it's actually, I mean, it's a wonderful program, and it brings people together. It really brings people together, and cultures, and a lot of understanding, no?
You opened a great suitcase there. Because, you know, talking about scholarships, and I think Belizeans now are extremely resilient in terms of making that step for better education. one of the things that I believe is that in order for you to manage properly, you must be exposed because you've seen it, and so therefore you're going to bring it back. How can one be a part of the scholarship? Is it only a master's degree, or tell us more about that? Let's expand there.
Yeah, for the moment, what we have at the EU level is master programs, 2 years, but there's so many different possibilities. Like nowadays, it's not like you study law or you study economics or you study whatever. I mean, you have so many different possibilities. So, I mean, I just invite anyone to go and look and see what is out there, because there's most European universities participate to it. But of course, there are more possibilities, not just Erasmus Mundus. I mean, that is one flagship program that we have, but we're 27 member states, and all those member states, they have universities, and all those universities have English speaking programs. So there's a lot out there. It requires a lot of Googling and going and checking what is out there, but I'm sure there's so many possibilities. In fact, it's very sad, but we do not have European member state embassies here in Belize. But I'm in contact with the ambassadors who are non-resident, but they come once in a while, and they were here in September, and we have I have a very good contact with all of them. And we're trying now to organize something in the month of May.
Secrets, it's coming out.
No, but to bring, to make Belizeans aware of what Europe is, what we stand for, what are the opportunities, and we're trying to organize something. It's not yet 100% determined, but something there where we bring in families and children, and we want to do like European Union in the park, EU in the park here in Belize City. So it's going to be a lovely event, but I really think this is what we need to do. We need to bring people together so they understand, because otherwise it's just a concept, no?
I think I appreciate the fact that, for example, I believe it was yesterday, there was the grand opening of the forensics building, right? A new building, a new lab with proper equipment and so forth is very much needed in our country. And I know that you were there. The EU was a collaborator within that, financing that project. One of the things that we don't really see often is the EU being a part. Like when we say, oh, okay, this was funded by the European Union, we don't often get to see a representative there for grand openings and so forth. So I do appreciate that. I guess this leads to my next question to ask if there's any other projects like this that we're going to be seeing you more often.
Anything on the horizon?
Yeah.
I'm going to be here as much as I can.
She wants a residency.
A residency. What do I need to do for that?
So tell us anything on the horizon?
More.
Yes, no, we try. I mean, I do have a lovely team here. I mean, it's not a full-fledged, huge, but I have very, very good people working here, and they help me organize the agendas. And when we have these kind of launching or opening or groundbreaking events, then we're now going to schedule my agenda a little bit around it. And not only me, I also have a head of cooperation, the one who's really in charge of the hard work. He's actually coming here at the end of February, and we have someone coming from headquarters as well. So what I'm trying to do is to have more representatives of the European Union. It doesn't always need to be me. I'm trying to be here at least 3 weeks a year. If I can come more, I will come more. But I think it is important to indeed be present and to say, listen, this is what we have been working together with. And so I'm very happy that we get some media coverage for it as well. But I really, I intend to have more people here also from the office working here, be present at these events, people coming from headquarters from Brussels, people coming from the team where I am resident, which is in Jamaica. And you will see that, don't worry.
I mean, I'm glad you brought it up, because you're not just the EU ambassador to Belize, but like John said, you have all of these other Caribbean countries under your belt. What perhaps would be the one policy, or perhaps that mandate that you would like to expound across all of these Caribbean islands during your time as ambassador?
Actually, I think I've said it, is the fact that I want I want those countries to go away from the idea that the European Union is there to fund projects.
Okay.
I mean, I really think it's important that they do understand, these countries, that we are now more in an equal partnership, and that there are global challenges that we want to work together. I mean, look at climate change. I mean, I've been hearing many of the Caribbean countries complaining about the fact that, you know, these countries are taking all the, you know, negative consequences of climate change, and that they were actually not at the origin, they didn't cause climate change, and they are 100% right. I mean, it is true. So I really think that on the one hand, European Union, European countries and others need to make sure that we help those countries to adapt themselves better in order to, you know, face whatever natural disasters which are coming this way, because they are going to come, we cannot stop it. But on the other hand, I also try to pass the message. It's like, okay, we, you know, it is what it is, but let's try now to work together, and let's try to, you know, coordinate our positions when there are negotiations at multilateral level, the COPs, etc. Let's try. I mean, it's not that we do not want to look at the past, because we do have to look at the past, and we take up our responsibility, but also look forwards and see what we can do together in order to make sure that, you know, it's not going to be as bad as it could be, and we all know it could be really bad.
Yeah, and then from the standpoint of tourism, we know that Europe is definitely one of the areas that Belize is actually focusing on there. Where's the conversation with respect to the Belize Tourism Board and the European Union? Is there anything going on?
I would just love to see a direct flight.
Same.
If that could come, that would help a lot. I mean, it's not so easy to come to Belize for Europeans. I mean, they have to come either via Miami or via Mexico, because we do not have any direct flights. From that point of view, let me say something. From the European Union, you have us, the institutions, and, you know, we do what we do, which is negotiating agreements and providing development aid and making sure that trade flows can go. But when we talk about what you're saying about investments, I mean, investments in tourism, we go one step down, and it's more our member states. So what are we trying to do now is to promote it. We would like to show that there are opportunities in the countries, and we would love to attract more investments here, for instance, in the tourist sector, because it's, you know, who doesn't want to come and visit Belize? Who doesn't want to come and visit Belize? But it's a good question, because I mean, I'm turning it towards investments, because more and more we would like to, I mean, when I look around in the country, and I've been traveling a lot, there's so much potential. So much potential. But what the country needs is transfer of know-how and transfer of capital in order, you know, to get things moving. And I mean, I don't think the European Union member states are that strong represented here. I fully agree, but I think there's a lot of opportunities. So that is also something on which I would like to work.
I wanted to kind of go back to the initial conversation about climate change, because when you first came and you asked if we're going to recycle something. And one of the key elements I think that is good for our collaboration is education, right? So you would know, as the ambassador, how you recycle certain objects in your home
not
country.
Me, but
right, in your home country. You would know how to
what to do.
The process would be, right? And majority of a lot of the developing nations across this side of the world don't. And so when we're talking about these kinds of education campaigns and projects and so forth, is that something that the EU is working on within these developing states?
Oh yes, with many countries that is very high on the agenda. It's a kind of, you know, there are different points to it, because first of all, you need to raise awareness. You need to tell the people, don't throw your waste on the street. I mean, make sure that, you know, you keep it all as clean as you can. And then you have to tell the people, make sure that you separate your waste, you know, between everything which is more like plastic, and then the paper, and then the glass, etc. But it's not just that, because then the people say, yeah, but I'm separating my waste, but you know, then the government, you know, someone has to come and pick it up. Because if afterwards it all comes together, which I have seen in many countries, it's like, why am I separating the waste? Because in the end it all comes together, so that's not a good thing. So then the other step is that you have to see how the government or the private sector can collect the waste, because waste in the end is not waste, it's also, it has value. And that is something which we start to understand more and more and more, that, you know, it's not because, you know, waste can be used, can be recycled, and can be put back into the economy. We do not always have to start looking for more minerals or looking for more trees to get paid, you know. So little by little, it's a lot about, you know, explaining the experience that we have, etc., etc. Then you work with the private sector, you work with the government, you raise awareness, you have the collection aspect. So there's so many things to this entire waste management system. I haven't seen really many of our projects focusing on that here in the country yet, but we would like, I mean, in the future, when we are like now reflecting on what exactly we're going to do, we would very much like to go towards at least the sustainable use of all the natural resources here in the country. We're going to be looking at the south in particular, because the south probably needs a little bit more push than the north in this country. I mean, that's what we think. So the thing about sustainably managing the forests, for instance, that you have, the amazing nature of this country, while on the same time providing livelihoods, no? So actually it's a lot about education, and say, how can I develop my livelihood? How can I live whilst I am not ruining these natural resources of the country? So that is a little bit what we are going to do. We haven't yet come to a point that we are sitting down with the government on recycling and waste management. We hope maybe in the future we could do so. I mean, there are other donors as well who are very interested in this. Things.
I've got to see a sit down with you.
I feel her passion. I know you can't feel it through the screen, but she's talking about the greenery, the tourism, and so forth, and
even how to become a resident, huh?
There's this amnesty program.
Marianne, we are so grateful that you were able to join us this morning. The conversation was definitely fruitful. Thank you so very much. Yes, we hope that we could get you back within one of those 3 weeks that you're here.